Thank you, James. So, as James said, my talk is quite strongly related to Ian's. What I'm basically going to present is a physical argument backing up what Ian is proposing and putting into practice. And also, the band made me realize that my point also is connected to their message. And hopefully you'll see that soon. To start with, I'm going to talk about a brilliant French engineer who sadly was way ahead of his time, and he died at the young age of 36 from a cholera epidemic. And I'm going to talk about the messages that he left us with and how they relate to sustainability. So, at the time when he was born in the late 1700s. It was the heart of the Industrial Revolution, which was a major transition in our civilization. And the Industrial Revolution at the time was largely driven by this huge power that could be harnessed using steam engines, such as this one here. And the strange thing was, at the time, it wasn't really understood how these devices worked. And this man, Sadi Carnot, wanted to understand what was really going on and how they worked. And in his short life, he managed to not only figure out how they worked, but he also discovered some fundamental laws of nature which are just as relevant today and I think will be relevant for forever, essentially. But anyway, he realized that the fundamental principles of any engine can be reduced to this very simple machine. Now, it's completely a hypothetical machine because it doesn't have any frictional losses, but nevertheless, it captures the basic principles of any internal combustion engine or any engine which uses an energy gradient, a temperature gradient or a chemical gradient. And as you can see, it essentially works. We have a small volume of gas in this piston. The gas doesn't leave or enter, so the amount of gas stays the same. All that we do is add and remove heat in various stages. And essentially, so here we have what we call a reservoir. So it's at some high temperature and it's kept hot by, let's say, a furnace. And similarly, there's a cold reservoir and heat moves in, the gas expands, and then the gas compresses again and heat is sucked out. And what this machine actually demonstrates is that if you want to generate useful mechanical work from a temperature gradient, you can only get so much energy out of it. What Carnot discovered is that not all forms of energy are equal. So we know that energy is conserved, it's neither created nor destroyed, but not all forms are the same. So in his engine, we have a flow of heat which is being transformed into useful work. What the Carnot engine also showed us, actually, is that the same process in reverse also works. But instead, we put the work in rather than get it out, and we create a temperature gradient. And again, this is a theoretical machine, but it still works by the same principles that any refrigerating device makes use of. So essentially, you have to put mechanical work in, and you end up with a temperature gradient. So going back to what I was saying before, not all energy is equal. So mechanical work, just a simple force like that, can be quite easily transformed into other forms of energy. For example, you could transform it into electricity, or you could turn it into heat by just friction. But on the other hand, heat is different. It's not quite as useful because some of the energy in heat energy is locked up in random, uncorrelated thermal vibrations. And that energy you can never really get at. So Carnot's engine demonstrated that out of any portion of heat energy, some of it you can turn it into work and then turn it into whatever else you want, but some of it you can never make use of. And actually he discovered that energy is always degrading in its quality and its usefulness. And this is what's known as the second law of thermodynamics. So how is this relevant to sustainability? I mean, theoretical engines are all well and good, but how does it help us? Well, actually, heat engines are all around us. So not just steam engines or turbines or internal combustion engines. I'm talking about organisms. So you, me, your cat, the bacteria in your stomach, they are all heat engines. And so actually, you can conceptualize an ecosystem so this is how we represent heat engines. I think you can represent an ecosystem in a very simple thermodynamic way as two heat engines, one running in reverse and one running forwards. So this heat engine, like I say, it runs in reverse, so you have to put work into it to create an energy gradient. Now, that work comes in the form of UV radiation from the sun, which we have in abundance. And the device which actually performs this stage is phototrophic organisms. Now, I'm talking here about plants and photosynthetic bacteria and algae and so forth. And what they essentially do is take in simple building blocks, use this useful energy coming from the sun to synthesize more complex, energy-rich molecules. Now, of course, this process is not perfect. Some of this radiation just leaves the system again. It's reflected back or it's absorbed and then re-emitted. And some of these complex molecules will eventually just be locked up in sediment. But most of it will carry on in this cycle. And the second stage is all organisms essentially using this energy gradient that the autotrophs have created to go about their daily business. So growing, reproducing, moving around, all their activities is powered by this energy gradient which has been created by the autotrophs. Now, all the organisms in this stage, they're taking in these energy-rich molecules and they're excreting something quite significantly less useful. But of course, this system is billions of years old and it's learned to recycle everything. So there are mechanisms in place so that these simple waste products coming from this stage can quite easily re-enter the system, and materially, we just have a cycle. In the end, all the activities of the organisms over here will result in heating up of the environment, essentially. So movement will cause frictional heating, and there'll be exothermic heat from chemical reactions. In the end, it'll all be re-radiated back to space as infrared, just by the surroundings being warmed up. And when that radiation leaves the Earth, it takes its extra entropy with it. So in this whole cycle, the energy coming in is matched by the energy going out, but the difference is that the energy going out has a higher entropy content. Now, entropy is a measure of how useful some energy is. So the higher entropy some energy is, the less useful it is, the more spread out it is. So low entropy energy is very useful. You can transform it into other forms, and higher entropy energy is less useful. So that's how natural ecosystems work. But of course, that's not the whole story. Nowadays, our species has sort of taken over management of this aspect of the Earth's functioning, and so this is no longer the whole story. So what happens in modern times? Well, firstly, and I'm talking here about our modern industrial civilization. So our source of free energy is not the sun. In fact, it's primarily mineral resources. I'm talking about fossil fuels, of course. And so through the use of technology, we take, again, some simple, relatively simple substances, minerals, and use this reverse heat engine in the shape of modern technology to turn those materials into the useful products which prop up our standard of living, or computers and airplanes and so forth. And in the second stage, it's also different as well, because we don't just move and grow and reproduce. We do a lot more. We consume. We go on holiday and play golf and go to the gym and work off energy that we just ate yesterday. What's the point of that? Anyway, so at this stage, we're essentially making use of all the useful energy that we've put into these products and consuming them. And of course, we end up with waste products. But there's a bit of a problem here, which I'd like to just demonstrate with an example. So this is quite a useful low entropy object. And so I'm going to demonstrate the consumption process. Well, not all of it. So right now, we've invested good energy in this. It's complex, organized. The substances it was made from were much simpler. I'll just consume the packaging. So under normal circumstances, I know you don't want to see me eating, but under normal circumstances, I would eat the sandwich, and I'd be left with this. And at this stage, this object undergoes a fundamental relabeling from useful to useless, and I would throw it away. So I've relabeled this as waste. I've decided that society has decided that it's now useless. But actually, how different is it from the very useful form it was in a minute ago? Well, chemically, it hasn't changed. Physically, has it changed? Well, yeah, that's sort of different. But the entropy content of this is almost unchanged from the entropy content of the more useful version it was in a minute ago. So why on earth would I relabel this as useless when in fact it's almost unchanged from its highly useful form a minute ago? So I believe we need to actually change the terminology slightly, because I don't consider that waste, because it's virtually the same as what it was a minute ago. And so the problem we have is that these useful substances are diminishing, and this pile of not so useless objects is increasing. And so this system has fundamental bottlenecks. It's not sustainable. I believe that this system has a future, whereas this one does not. And of course, it's not as if we would have that many problems transitioning to the more cyclic, sustainable way of doing things. We could quite easily mimic this stage. Photovoltaics are well developed. And it wouldn't be that difficult, as Ian's very, very nicely showed us, to actually bring these substances back into the loop and have a completely cyclic system. So I think we need to make this transition now and do it by choice, because if we wait for the economic forces to sort of take over, well, we could wait so long that the situation is much, much less amenable to the transition. And so I fundamentally believe that we should transform this into this, because this system has already been going for 3 billion years, whereas we've only just got started. Thanks very much.